Before teen idols were polished for magazine covers or filtered for Instagram, there was Christy McNichol, a raw, emotional, fiercely real young star who connected with audiences in a way almost no one else did. In the late 70s and early 80s, she wasn't just famous. She was adored. Fans saw her as the honest, vulnerable heart of shows like Family, and Hollywood expected her to shine forever. And then, she vanished. No dramatic scandal, no tabloid meltdown. Just a sudden disappearance that left fans asking the same question for more than 3 decades. What happened to Christy McNichol? Now, after 31 years, the truth about why she walked away is finally coming into focus. Stay with us to find out. Christy McNichol didn't enter Hollywood through fame or family connections. She slipped in almost by accident. Her mother, Carolyn, was juggling a patchwork of odd jobs simply to keep the household afloat. She worked as a secretary, sold makeup, and even took tiny roles as a movie extra, not for glamour, but for survival. During one of those small roles in the low-budget film Bigfoot, Carolyn brought Christy and her older brother Jimmy along because she couldn't find a babysitter. The set wasn't magical or exciting. It was just another place their mother had to be. Jimmy, fascinated by monsters and movie tricks, ran around. Wide-eyed Christy, on the other hand, was terrified. She stayed in the car the entire time, too nervous to even step onto the set, but fate found her anyway. A crew member noticed the kids and casually mentioned they'd be perfect for commercials. That simple comment opened the first unexpected door. Before long, both Christy and Jimmy were auditioning. Commercials led to sitcom opportunities. Jimmy found steady work, but Christy stood out immediately. She didn't just act, she lit up the screen. At just 14, she landed the role of Buddy on the Emmy-winning series Family. It didn't just launch her career, it became the role that defined her almost overnight. Christy McNichol went from a shy girl hiding in a car to a household name. And even then, she wasn't like other teen stars. There was a depth and seriousness in her that far exceeded her age. Even away from the cameras, Christy McNichol often felt as if she were living life in reverse. She wasn't the child of the house. She was the one keeping it together. She once told her mother, "You're the child," and her mom replied, "And you're the mother." It wasn't a joke. It was simply how their world worked. While other kids were riding bikes or sneaking candy, Christy was cleaning, taking care of responsibilities, and wondering when her mother would come home. So when she started working on Family, she approached it the only way she knew how, like a full-time job. "I was like a miniature adult," she later said. "I'd go off to work every day with a little briefcase." That wasn't an exaggeration. Christy brought an emotional depth to Buddy that felt far beyond her years, portraying a teenager who questioned the world and refused to accept easy answers. Audiences sensed that authenticity immediately and connected with her. But while most kids her age were still figuring themselves out, Christy was being praised, judged, and watched by millions. She didn't transition into adulthood. She skipped childhood altogether. And though the spotlight turned her into a star, it also began casting long shadows. By the time Family ended in 1980, Christy had appeared in nearly 100 episodes and was seen as one of television's most composed young talents. But behind the scenes, she was barely 18 and already emotionally drained. That same year, she starred in Little Darlings, an iconic coming-of-age film that only added to her growing fatigue. Christy later admitted she never knew how to say no. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how to set boundaries. Her desire to please, especially to make her mother proud, kept her constantly working. "Before I could even say yes or no," she recalled, "I'd be on a plane to a new set." Her life revolved around work, leaving almost no room for herself. On the outside, Christy still appeared calm, polished, and professional. But inside, something was beginning to crack. After Little Darlings, she started acting out in small, harmless ways: food fights, pranks, sudden flashes of rebellion. It was as if she were desperately trying to experience the childhood she never had time to live. "It was like I wanted to live my childhood underneath," she later said. While the world admired a poised young star, Christie was quietly grieving the girl she never got to be. Though her fame skyrocketed in the late 70s because of family, her talent extended far beyond television. She remained in the public eye not only as an actress but also as a musician, often performing alongside her older brother, Jimmy. In 1977, she took the stage with Karen Carpenter during The Carpenters at Christmas, singing beside a legend whose own life was marked by silent struggles. The following year, Christie and Jimmy released a self-titled pop album, a collection of upbeat melodies and warm sibling harmony. Their cover of He's So Fine even broke into the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 70. They teamed up with the Carpenters again on A Christmas Portrait, further solidifying their presence as one of the most beloved teen duos of the era, talented, charismatic, and seemingly unstoppable. But behind the glossy magazine covers and cheerful TV appearances, Christie was quietly coming apart. The constant pressure, nonstop travel, and relentless expectations were chipping away at her fame, once exciting, had become overwhelming. Eventually, the strain caught up with her, leading to a major emotional breakdown. During that difficult time, it was Jimmy who stepped in, not as a fellow performer, but as a protective older brother. He moved in with her, offering the steady presence and comfort she desperately needed. Their lifelong bond became her anchor at a moment when everything else felt unsteady. By the early 1980s, Christie was fully entrenched in the spotlight. She had grown up in front of America, evolving from a gifted child actor into one of the most sought-after young stars of her generation. Between 1977 and 1983, she appeared in 8 films, a demanding pace for someone barely out of high school. Among them were memorable roles in Little Darlings, The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, Only When I Laugh, and White Dog. Each performance highlighted her remarkable range, warmth, vulnerability, humor, and emotional grit. But the workload was brutal, and the pressure that came with it only intensified the cracks forming beneath the surface. The last film in that intense stretch of work was Just the Way You Are, 1984. In it, Christie played a musician with a physical disability, a woman searching for love and acceptance while hiding behind a leg brace. The role demanded subtlety, emotional honesty, and vulnerability. On screen, it looked like the perfect challenge for a talented young actress off-screen. It pushed her to the edge. The movie was set to film in Paris, and on paper it seemed like a dream project. But Christie's mind was already unraveling. As the start date approached, her anxiety spun out of control. She stopped sleeping, lost her appetite, and was overwhelmed by fear she couldn't put into words. Feeling something was deeply wrong, she turned to her manager and asked for help, hoping for guidance or even just reassurance. Instead, she was brushed aside. "Don't worry, we'll get through it," he told her. What was meant to comfort her only made her feel more alone. Years later, she would describe that moment with painful clarity. She had reached out for someone to truly listen, and no one did. Despite her mounting panic, Christie was sent to France. Once filming began, her condition deteriorated quickly. Her weight dropped to just 96 pounds. She couldn't sleep, and when she did, she was tormented by vivid, unsettling dreams. During the day, she shook with anxiety, crying in private whenever she could find a moment alone. In her trailer, on set, even in hallways. She later described herself plainly. "I was a wreck." It was obvious she had hit a breaking point. When the production paused for a holiday break, Christie returned to California and finally found someone who heard her a close friend, took her to a specialist who worked with adolescents in emotional crisis. The doctor didn't just diagnose her, he recognized her. He told Christie she had been carrying years of unexpressed anger and pain, buried so deeply she hadn't even realized it existed. Her childhood had never allowed her the space to feel or process those emotions. Now, under pressure, they had all erupted at once. The doctor urged her not to return to France, not to finish the film. And for the first time in her life, Christy listened to what she needed. She walked away. It was a bold act of self-preservation from a woman who had spent her entire life trying to meet everyone else's expectations. But Hollywood is rarely forgiving to those who step away. During Christie's year-long break, rumors spread like wildfire. Tabloids painted her as a drug addict, an alcoholic, even mentally unstable. The studio's vague explanation about a chemical imbalance only intensified the speculation. The real truth, that Christie was suffering from severe anxiety and depression, was completely buried under layers of gossip and judgment. She later said, "I think it would be easier to kick that kind of habit than go through the years of hell that I have." Her words revealed what the world never saw. Her mental health crisis had been invisible, and the industry she once lit up now felt cold and unforgiving. Christie eventually returned to finish Just the Way You Are, but the comeback didn't revive her career. The roles that followed were fewer, smaller, and less impactful. Films like Love, Mary, and Dream Lover failed to make an impression, and even promising titles, You Can't Hurry. Love, Two Moon Junction, came and went without leaving a mark. Then, in 1988, she found a new source of stability, at least on the surface, in the NBC sitcom Empty Nest, a spin-off of The Golden Girls. She played Barbara Weston, a police officer and central member of the ensemble cast. The show ran for 7 seasons, and Christie appeared in more than 100 episodes, quietly rebuilding a career many assumed was over. But even as she smiled on screen, she was still fighting internal battles. Eventually, she received a diagnosis that finally made sense of the turmoil she had carried for so many years. Bipolar disorder. It brought clarity, but it also made something painfully clear. Her life could not continue the way it had. In 1992, during the 5th season of Empty Nest, Christie stepped away from the show for health reasons. She returned briefly before the series ended, but it was clear that her time in front of the camera was drawing to a close. The industry that had once embraced her now felt overwhelming and confining. Fame had taken her childhood, then her peace of mind, and now she needed to reclaim something for herself. In 2001, Christie officially retired from acting. It wasn't a retreat or a failure. It was a conscious choice to take back her life. "I was on the big stage between ages 8 and 30, she later reflected. "I left show business for a variety of reasons, but a big one was my interest in learning what else there was in life." From that point on, Christy McNichol embraced a quieter, more private existence. She focused on teaching, philanthropy, and healing on her own terms. In 2012, she publicly came out, sharing her story to support others struggling with identity or mental health. It was a gentle but powerful gesture, another way of giving back while staying true to herself. After decades in the spotlight, Christie made the rare and difficult choice to leave it all behind. Her departure wasn't marked by scandal or dramatic headlines. It was a quiet, necessary step toward survival. In 2001, her publicist released a statement that distilled everything she had been carrying for years. "I retired from my career after 24 years. My feeling was that it was time to play my biggest part, myself." In that one line, she finally said what fame had long overshadowed. Christy McNichol was ready to stop performing for the world and start living for herself. In the years that followed, Christy built a life that looked nothing like the chaos she had grown up in. There were no more relentless shooting schedules, no more interviews, no more red carpets. Instead, her days became filled with small, quiet joys: yoga, tennis, and long afternoons spent with her dogs. For someone who had lived under overwhelming pressure for so long, that calm felt like a hard-won gift. She didn't disappear from the world. She simply chose how she wanted to engage with it. In 2012, she came out publicly, not for headlines, but to offer support to others who might be struggling in silence, just as she once had. She understood the power of visibility and shared her truth as a gentle act of solidarity. Though she never returned to acting full-time, Christy stayed connected to the arts. She sang with the Los Angeles Valley College Choir and supported a local foundation dedicated to protecting music programs. Music wasn't just a pastime for her, it was healing, a steady anchor in a life that had often felt unsteady. Now in her 60s, Christy describes her life as peaceful and fulfilling. She has created a home centered on calm and contentment, something that once seemed out of reach. And through everything, her brother Jimmy remains by her side, just as he was during her darkest moments. He is still the constant in a world that once moved far too fast. Will she ever return to the screen? When asked in 2015, Christy simply said, "Never say never." But whether she does or not almost doesn't matter. Her career was lightning in a bottle, a brief, brilliant rise that left an indelible mark. But that brilliance came at a price. A childhood sacrificed and a mind pushed to its limits today. Christy McNichol finally lives life on her own terms, and that, more than any role, might be her greatest achievement.